Hello, everybody.
Hello.
We are back from a week of. So people were so excited about the previous Lost episode that we decided to record another one.
Yes.
Microphone and audio technology, Alex. How does it work?
Well, I'm not really sure, but I do know that it changes the level of conductivity between a wire, and then computers record how that conductivity changes, and then they use that data to build an audio file, and then speakers basically use the same but reverse technology to change the current in a wire, which causes a magnet to fluctuate in a magnetic field, which causes a bell to vibrate and transmit audio. Something like that.
The answer I was looking for was not very well.
I have a solution to this problem.
Okay.
We need to sell at least one ad for at least 1 cent, because then we'll have made money, and then we'll be professionals, and that should fix all our problems.
Oh, that's brilliant. Let's do 2. Alex, you can pay me once because then we don't have to transfer. You can
Okay.
do an ad right now, and I'll do an ad a little bit later in the podcast. So, Alex, this episode is brought to you by.
Telephones United. We unite all telephones into a giant supercomputer and then calculate the weather.
See, now I have to Google and see if that's a real company so that we don't get liability problems.
Okay. What's your ad then, Kevin?
Well, I don't know. Currently, you owe the site 1 penny.
Okay.
So
All right,
that's you owe me a half a penny.
Okay. Right. Where's my wallet?
You know, it also would not surprise me at all to discover that you actually have a half penny, like somewhere in your house. You seem like the type of person that would just have like old coins.
I'm sure I have a half penny in my house. I am not anywhere near New Hampshire at the moment, though, so I'm far away from all my half cents.
Yeah, so tell the listeners and who you are, where you are, what do you do?
Who I am?
Exactly.
Well, I'm George Chappell from
right.
the year 1934.
All right.
And
working for Telephones United.
Yes, building a supercomputer out of smartphones in the year 1934.
All right.
So I can get home because I'm trying to predict where the next thunderstorm is, so I can power my time machine.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
I think I've read this story.
Yeah.
Or perhaps
I don't know.
8 stories.
Or more. And right now I've come to Kitty Hawk in North Carolina to try to harness the Wright brothers' temporal energy.
When I think about the Wright brothers, for some reason I place them in like the lower Midwest. I place that in Missouri. I have bad geographical knowledge.
No, Outer Banks. So I'm on this like really long island that's just off the coast of North Carolina.
Wait. They flew the plane on an island?
Well, no, it's not really an
water
island. Well, they wanted to. There's a whole bunch of sand dunes. I'm on a really big like sand dune right now.
Okay.
That runs along the coast of North Carolina, and they wanted to fly it on the sand dunes because there's high wind, which is easier for planes,
Okay.
and it's soft ground, so they wouldn't die or smash up their airplane.
Soft is a relative thing. It's not like spongy.
I don't know. These sand dunes are pretty. You could fall on them. I mean, it would be better
but
than
not
the
from a
granite of
plane.
New Hampshire.
I wouldn't recommend falling on them from a plane.
Their planes were like 20 feet at most off the ground, and that's at the peak of their climb.
Right.
Wasn't a huge deal.
Well, see, that's the thing. That's another thing I don't know. This is an embarrassing gap in my understanding of. I know that they flew the first one. I have no idea, like, what they eventually did after. Like, they went, we're gonna build. Like, you see, those newsreels of like, this person put a bike and put some wings on it, and look, they tried to go off a cliff, and it totally didn't work, and everyone thought they were crazy. But then the Wright brothers, and they fly the one time, and then I'm like, from history's perspective, then they ceased to exist. I don't know what happened to them after that.
They kept developing them. They never founded a big company that turned into like Boeing or anything, but they kept working on it. Perhaps their biggest achievement actually was the invention of the wind tunnel. So they invented the first wind tunnel to test a ton of wing designs that then got used on their planes. I mean, and their big thing wasn't even necessarily the first flight. It was their first powered, heavier than air flyer design. So,
Right.
like, the exact thing they did was fairly specific, although if you fly in a commercial airline today, that's a powered, heavier than air design. Yeah, they didn't really do anything huge beyond that. Like, they didn't turn into Boeing. They went back to Ohio, because that's where they were from. They were from Dayton, Ohio, and they had a bicycle shop. And they'd come back to Kitty Hawk and this area every few years and test new designs and refine their systems. But I think it was the work that they inspired others people to do that really brought us the airline industry we know today, not their direct descendants.
I don't remember why I was watching this. I watched, there was this lecture that Warren Buffett was giving to a bunch of students. He said, as cool as the airline industry is, any investor would have done very good to just shoot both of them before they got the thing off the ground, because no one has ever made a profit off of airplanes. We've been doing airplanes forever. It has never been a profitable thing. Like, not ever been a thing. But I think he brings it up, I think, to illustrate this whole issue where we measure quality of life in terms of gross domestic product and things like this. That if you look at the airline industry, it's clearly a net loss for humanity, like financially. If you look at quantitatively, quantitatively. I know the difference between words. That it was a worthless endeavor, not worth doing. And yet, I think we probably mostly agree that planes are good.
Yeah, I mean, if it weren't for airplanes, I couldn't order a laptop and have it get to me in like 24 hours.
Exactly.
How would we live without that?
How would we have rampant consumerism without...
Exactly. Now you get it.
No, but more importantly, if we didn't have planes, we would never have had rockets. I think that's...
Well, that's kind of true.
I think it's true.
When did... No, like the guy... He went to my university, and I don't remember his name. He invented the liquid-fueled rocket. What the heck is his name?
So, speaking of humble brags, Alex... Wow.
What is his name?
Wow.
I can't, I don't get credit because
I want to express my appreciation for you letting me be on this podcast in your presence.
Who the heck was he? Goddard Doy.
Goddard Doy. All right.
Yes.
So what did Mr.
Robert
Doy...
Goddard. I was trying to remember what year did he invent liquid-fueled rocketry. 1921 was when he fired the first liquid-fueled rocket.
That is crazy. That is
I knew
crazy early.
I mean, it was in 1903 that it was early in 1903 that the first powered flight happened. So it was still 20 years later. But
still, man. Yeah, that's crazy. And we had air balloons. We had rigid airships.
I mean, yes, we did. Dirigibles.
I miss rigid airships, man.
We should start a company.
We should.
Going back to the thing Goddard got his bachelor's in physics. From the same university my dad got his bachelor's in physics from, and that I will shortly have my bachelor's in computer science from.
Couldn't make it in physics, huh? Well, that's a shame.
I didn't try.
That's all right, Alex. Maybe in another life. Oh well.
Yeah, maybe in another life. I will go back and try to get my bachelor's in physics for some reason.
Oh man, actually, if I were gonna. Okay, actually, that's a question. If you were gonna go back to this is probably like the worst time to ever ask you this question.
I'm not done with college yet.
No, but if you decided you were going to go back and get a second bachelor's degree, what would it be in?
Oh, probably physics.
Really?
Yeah, I took a lot of physics. Although technically speaking, I'd probably get an electrical engineering degree first.
Really?
But, yeah.
But you already have a computer science one.
Yeah, and I almost have a minor in electrical engineering because of that.
Oh, okay.
I basically took computer science, physics, and electrical engineering classes, and then all of the humanities junk.
Ooh, harsh. Wow.
Writing and history. Yeah. Who needs it? Of course, now I've proven that I needed it because I couldn't remember who Robert Goddard was. I paid more attention in university history class, which I didn't take. But
Those humanities. Oh man, Alex, are you anti-human?
No. Well, maybe. Depends on what they're doing.
No, it's interesting because I've thought about this. I think physics is up there for me of like if I were to go back, because I mean I did go back and get my degree, but that was more just to have it done and have a degree. If I ever did go back again, it'd be because like I actually want to learn stuff. It's not because I need a credential for life. Physics, I think, would be one of those, and it's not because it's something that I've done a lot of. It's something that I feel is actually more of a gap in my understanding than most things. If that makes sense.
I mean, I know nothing about biology and very little about chemistry. I feel like I know more about physics than I do biology and chemistry. I would think you'd be the same, would not?
Well, see, the thing is, I don't know. I don't feel that way. Part of it is I did a lot of chemistry stuff in high school. I did AP chemistry in high school. I didn't take any physics classes. Like, I've never taken a dedicated physics. Well, let me think. No, I don't think I have. I don't think I've taken dedicated physics courses.
But then again, you do teach rocket physics on the internet and not biology and chemistry.
It's not really. Well, I guess it's more just math, though.
Yeah, that's what physics is.
No, that's not. No, physics is springs and pulleys stuff. I'm just like, we're gonna go to space, but not straight. We're gonna curve. That's just this is my explanation of physics.
Physics is just a big book of equations that describe how the world works.
No, that's math, Alex.
Yeah, well, they're the same thing.
You're confusing these things.
I don't think I am.
You know, something occurred to me. So there's this XKCD, which I will link in the show notes, that talks about this. I think it starts off with this psychologist making fun of a sociologist saying sociology is just applied psychology. Biologist says, well, yeah, but psychology is just applied biology, and the chemist is like, and then there's this whole gap, and then there's the mathematicians all the way on the end. It's like, hey guys, very amusing. But I saw since you are mocking the humanities, I did see someone, and I can't remember where it was, but talking about how they really just hated philosophy in particular.
Oh, I mean, philosophy is perhaps the one humanity that I didn't really despise.
Well, because this is the thing, is like I don't remember what it was, but there's like, science has gotten us all this stuff, but philosophy is just like, why? Well, if you think about it, mathematics is just applied philosophy, though. Like, philosophy is kind of the fundamental system of the fundamental field.
Certainly metaphysics. I could see metaphysics being the father or mother of mathematics.
Well, I was thinking more logic.
Mathematics. Logic? True, but is logic... Well, okay. Logic and metaphysics.
Yeah. So, math is math is just an abstraction on top of philosophy.
Okay. So I can go along with that.
So humanities underlie all of the sciences. That STEM is just an abstraction on top of the humanities, Alex. This is the point that I'm making.
Well, no. I'll disagree with that, but I can see how an understanding of philosophy could bring you to an understanding about how we came about with mathematics and then how we came about with physics. But I'm not saying it's a prerequisite. You don't have to understand why we had the desire to know or how we could know that math is this thing, to use math.
That's not the right benchmark, because you don't have to know about vectors to understand protozoa. Basically, you can abstract away stuff and not have an understanding of the underlying. I don't understand. I mean, we both are computer scientists, and yet, do we understand the quantum field theory? Like, do we understand?
Well, what about it?
Any of it?
Well, I can't proclaim to know enough to build a quantum computer.
But do you know do you know off the top of your head the topology of the processor in the computer that you're recording this podcast on?
I've seen the schematics. I know roughly how it's laid out.
Roughly, yeah, yeah.
I could draw.
You understand an abstraction of how it works and what it does. I can draw a CPU pipeline, and I can explain how that works. And I can explain forwarding, and I can explain caches. But I don't know. I don't happen to know the topology of whatever happens to be in my computer right now. So I don't think it's fair to say that because you don't that it's a requirement that you understand in its entirety a lower thing to understand a higher thing.
Okay, but I'm still not convinced that it's built on top of each other. So logic is how we reason about the world. Okay, and I guess if you need logic, I guess math does prerequisite logic.
Well, and math itself
it would fall apart.
Right. Exactly.
Math would fall apart without the glue of logic, and if we accept that logic is... I'm using logic right now, and if we accept that logic is part of the realm of philosophy, then yes.
Well, and math is also just an abstract metaphor, an abstract metaphorical world in which rules apply and are agreed to by people.
Yeah.
And we only adopt a new mathematical theorem to the extent that it works in this fake universe that would never really be real. Like, there's no such thing as a circular circle.
Well, not in this universe.
Right. But, it's this metaphorical abstract
wait a second.
concept.
Wait. Could black holes be perfect circles? Wouldn't, by definition, they would have to be?
I don't think so.
Well, no, because singularities, maybe. I would be surprised to find the event horizon to be a perfect circle.
It's possible, but that was just an example. Make it a triangle then. All right.
A triangular singularity.
Yeah, you're not going to find perfect triangles. There's no such
Probably
thing
true.
as a perfect
Probably
triangle.
true.
There could be a perfect triangle to within the Planck length, but it's still not a perfect triangle.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine what sort of phenomena would bring about a perfect triangle.
Right. But the math is this understanding that we have this metaphorical world that we're just going to pretend exists and is a thing, and we're going to add to our understanding of that world based on whether things are coherent in that world, and that presumes metaphor. So math is based also on, high school English class.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No. No. No.
I will say I took mostly math and science courses in high school, but the most valuable course that I had was my freshman English class.
Really?
Yeah, by a pretty significant margin.
I never was a fan of English classes. Mostly because I never felt like I was doing anything useful, and it was just, I don't know. I mean, I admit that you communicate very well through writing, and that if you can express your ideas and thoughts in writing, then perhaps they have the most leverage they could possibly have, but it just felt boring, and like I didn't want to be doing it ever.
But writing is the fundamental of speaking, and now we're speaking.
I'll say I don't enjoy grammar. I don't enjoy grammar. It's just, I don't know. If you can convey them, and then again, sometimes having good grammar can distract some people, or having bad grammar, I should say, can distract some people from
Having good grammar
deriving.
will distract a lot of people too.
Yeah, it's true. I don't know.
Actually, so today at work, there was an email that went out to everybody that ended with the hashtag #blessup.
Bless up?
Yes.
Okay, what does that mean?
Apparently, it's an expression now. See, this is me going like, I'll get off my lawn. Like, I have no idea what this means.
Oh, I thought you actually looked it up or something.
No,
it
was on Urban Dictionary, and it's like God bless, I guess. But it's like I'd never heard this expression.
It's been around since at least 2012.
How? Right, but there are all these words, Alex, and phrases and things that I don't know anymore.
And not all of them follow proper grammar. It's great.
It got me thinking, because I got kind of irritated by this email, because it ended with bless up, but it said other things, and I'm like, I don't know what any of these words mean. And I felt bad because it was just sent out to everybody as though this was the way that people talked, and I felt excluded.
Oh,
Like, this is not a poor me story. It's more because
I'm sorry, Kevin.
I don't know things. But it did get me to sort of wonder about when we use jargon, to what extent that is a mechanism for just social exclusion.
I mean, I think it highly depends on the context. I mean, if you're talking, if it helps the conversation and if it helps you convey your meaning and your point better, I would say that's not necessarily an exclusion factor. If you're doing it to sound prim and proper and because that's the way it's done or that's how you think it should be done,
Right.
then probably not. Probably not as useful, and it's probably more of a societal tick than a...
Well, I'm not sure that... I mean, this then comes down, I guess, more almost into a question of ethics. Because I'm not sure that it necessarily matters what the intent is. Because to give you an example, people have, over the past several years, occasionally commented on my videos that I use big words a lot.
Yeah?
I don't know what they're talking about. I don't... To me, it doesn't strike me that I use big words. Though, now that I'm listening, I don't think people my age say, "it strikes me." I think that's an expression most people my age do not say.
I'd say it occasionally.
You do, you? Okay.
Yeah, but I'm not certain that the people around me
It
do.
may be a little antiquated or a little highbrow.
Yeah.
Antiquated, there's one. I don't think most people our age say antiquated.
So I do imitate a lot of the speaking of people that I find to be eloquent speakers, or I find to enjoy the speaking and speech patterns of. So you watch a lot of Carl Sagan, you watch a lot of Star Trek, you watch a lot of Doctor Who. That those types of things, that like it strikes me is not an unused phrase in those contexts.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm fairly certain I would have derived it from there.
Mm.
See, I'm fairly certain I would have derived is also not
Right.
something that a lot of people say. So, you know.
Yeah, but now it's got me sort of wondering, does it come off because I read this email and it you know, obviously I wasn't really upset. It was just enough that I was briefly irked, and then it was enough to get me to think about it, really. It was like just enough irk to make me notice that I was irked. But it got me to wondering if by using the vocabulary that is natural to me, because I'm not good enough with words to deliberately inflate my language. Like, I don't.
You'd have to learn them and practice them to do that.
Right, like,
you have to enter them into your vocabulary.
I suppose there were a couple times in high school where you're talking with your friends about computery stuff, and there's this one person who's a jerk and wants to crash your conversation but doesn't know anything about computers, and you're like, oh, and then you start throwing in a lot of jargon and hope that they go away. Like, there were a couple times where I was a jerk like that as a kid, but it's never a conscious decision on my part to say, I'm going to insinuate certain hypotheses about the economies of human integrity such that it might elucidate certain reactions forthwith on behalf of... I don't know. I can't do it. I can't.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you were trying to say there.
Right, but I can't deliberately inflate my language like that. So it's not something that I consciously do. But I wonder now if the language that I use unwittingly scares people away or makes them feel irked or disconnected or excluded.
I don't think people use irked either.
That's a one syllable. Come on. Oh, okay, it's a 2-syllable word. That shouldn't count. Come on.
I'm just now that I'm listening to your speech patterns and I'm listening to mine.
There's a lot of I think there's a great video by Nerdwriter, the fantastic YouTuber, talks about the speech patterns of Donald Trump as well.
Yeah,
and that they are mostly monosyllabic.
Yeah,
Monosyllabic also maybe being a word.
We're not talking about Trump, though. I was going to say something about Trump, but I'm not going to say it because we're not talking about
No, but without talking about politics, I mean, it's if you look at the fact that he is somehow connecting with people
Yeah.
by speaking a certain language.
Well, it doesn't surprise me that the base he's connecting with, and it doesn't surprise me that that language resonates with them.
Okay, see now I feel.
Yeah. See?
Now that makes me feel very uncomfortable. I don't think. No, okay. I'm just gonna say, like, having watched the debates, I was caught up in his magnetism by the way that he spoke. I don't agree with his policies, but I will say that the language, I noticed the effect that the language had on myself. I don't think it's. I want to be clear that it's not. We're not saying I'm not surprised that the idiots respond well to this language. I just wanted to clarify that point. That's not what we're saying at all. It's not like, well, obviously it resonates with those poor common people,
Yeah, no. That would be terrible.
Right. Okay. This is why we don't politics.
Yeah. No. Nope.
But no, I do. It does scare me now. I wonder if maybe language is something that excludes people, and to what extent that's something that you have a responsibility to regulate in yourself.
Well, I'm sure that the language does exclude people. I mean, I'm not sure how it couldn't. Just based on if you don't know the meanings of enough words, you're going to lose the conversation and you're going to stop following.
Right.
To what extent that applies in our everyday life, and to what extent that should influence our decisions and how we try to regulate our own vocabulary, I don't know. Perhaps somewhat. I think it's something to be mindful of, certainly. And if we notice it's becoming an issue,
but let's assume that you have noticed that it's an issue. Like, let's assume that you discover that. Let's assume that, like, in your friend group, all of them say you use a lot of big words, and then they stop spending as much time with you. Even then, what is the appropriate thing to do? I mean, I know that personally, I would feel a lot of friction because from kind of day one of being alive, there is kind of a message of learn more things, be smarter than you are right now. Like that's kind of always been. First, it was other people saying that, then it was other people, and now it's me saying that to myself. But
knowing what a word means doesn't mean you have to use it,
right? But at the same time, we do respect. We respect people that are well spoken in certain contexts.
Yes. But we don't always respect people who are. We don't always respect people who are well spoken outside of those contexts.
See, I don't know. I feel like I would very much enjoy listening to someone with a crazy expanded vocabulary talk about like I would enjoy having a beer with someone who is just a great polemicist.
Okay.
Like, would you not? Would you not like enjoy having a beer with Socrates or something?
Yes, I certainly would. However, is that more of a novelty, and would you tire of it after a while? That would be my concern. Yeah. Is that if you don't have a similar vocabulary that you use in everyday context, then how would you feel if someone else had a much more eloquent library of vocabulary and used it all the time? Might that not get grating? Or would it influence your own?
For someone who doesn't like grammar, you just said, might that not get? And that's pretty grammatical right there.
Yeah, I don't like grammar. I don't like grammar. Especially don't writing grammar. All those stupid rules and where you can. I just put commas after everything and I just go with it. Just comma, 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 comma. It's like a song. There's a song about that?
Yeah,
like
I think so. Yeah, the grammar song.
Something.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Point of the matter is, see, no one says point of the matter. Except when they're like in a meeting.
Clearly, no one can listen to this podcast just based on the words that we choose to use.
We should look up that list of 1,000 words that Randall Monroe used when he was writing Thing Explainer.
Well, thousands is... There's also the 100 words, which is basic English. I don't. It's maybe.
Yeah.
I think it's like 150.
Yeah.
Which is kind of the core of English that generally you can get by with, and as foreign language, not non-native speakers. Generally, that's the subset that you begin with. And if you're writing certain documentation that you're trying to make sure can be understood by the largest number of people, you restrict yourself to that subset.
Why don't they teach foreign languages like that? Because that'd been great if I'd gone into like Spanish class and it's like, here's a dictionary of 150 words.
Well, I mean, they mostly
learn these by heart.
They mostly do.
They probably do, but they didn't tell me that it was only 150. Right. If they told me that I only need to memorize 150 words to be able to convey basic communication in most languages, I'd probably memorize that. In fact, now I want to go out and memorize like those 150 words in like 12 different languages.
Yeah, actually,
that'd be great.
Do those exist? Like, because I know I hear the expression basic English, but I don't know if I've heard.
Right? Can you? But I mean, there's grammar issues. Like in Spanish, there's 7 or 8 different conjugations of one word. So every word is then multiplied by like 8.
That's true in English as well. But I think there's the idea with basic English is not that you would even speak with proper conjugation.
True.
You might say, "I looking lemonade," and someone
that's
go
probably
like,
enough.
I get what you mean." Like, if in an emergency, I might roll my eyes at your education, but I'd get you some lemonade.
I would doubt lemonade is in the basic 150 words. It seems a little
lemon
extravagant.
water. Yeah, I don't know.
Would lemon water would definitely
water of lemon.
Well, the word lemon. I can't imagine lemon being in the basic 150
fair enough.
vocabulary of words. Oh, that'd be great. If you could just like any language, you could say, it'd be super useful traveling. Just 150 words. That's low.
Of course, Googling for basic English brought me to the simple Wikipedia.
Yeah. Yep. That's what I thought of.
Oh, okay. So actually, basic English is an acronym, not just an initialism, but an acronym.
Wow.
This is the Business, Academic, Scientific, International, Commercial English. So it is a constructed language to explain complex thoughts. It has, I'm sorry, I was wrong. It has 850 basic English words.
Oh. See, I thought it was closer to 1,000.
Right.
Well, I knew Randall Munroe used 1,000, and I didn't think it was that augmented.
Oh,
I knew
this
it was
is
more
interesting. It's not just that it has limited words, but it actually has different grammar rules. For example, you apply SES or IES to a noun, and it becomes a plural noun. So sheepses is the plural of sheep in basic English. That makes sense. Why don't we just adopt these rules instead of having all of these crazy plural?
Yeah,
that'd be brilliant. I'm trying to think of like what are some of the words that are
deer.
No, not the ones that are the same word, but ones where the plural is like a completely different word.
Crows? A murder of crows is
but you just said crows. Crow and crows.
Oh, that's true. Okay. I don't know. You're making me think of words on the spot. SpaceX. SpaceX's?
Hang on. Weird plural words. Oh, okay. There's an example. Bacteria and bacterium.
Okay.
Bacterias. Bacteria. Okay. That's brilliant. Why can't we just do that? Can we please adopt basic English? Or
I'd vote for it.
Why was I spacing on it? This children. License, that's okay.
Childs?
Cactus, cacti.
Cactuses. Really? Most people say cactuses.
No.
I don't know if I've ever heard anyone say cacti.
Goose and geese.
Gooses. Geeses.
Right, gooses would be fine.
Geeses. I want a golden egg for Christmas. Something like that. That's how the song goes.
I want a goose to lay gold eggs for Easter.
Yeah, that's it. You're much better at remembering that than I
am. The bulk of my life was devoted to memorizing and repeating quotes from things.
I really, as a child, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory was my favorite. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, excuse me. I read the book like 3 or 4 times, yeah. watched the movie more times than I can remember.
Well,
Gene Wilder is the man.
absolutely. So my family, and this is still true with my family, especially when I'm hanging out with my siblings, is we are always throwing quotes from random things into conversation.
I do it. None of really my family does it a lot. My dad on occasion,
Okay.
but I do it a lot. Not really the rest of them.
Okay. So I mean, it's usually like a lot of times we'll pay extra attention to quoting things that we may have all recently seen or things like that. I've
Yeah.
occasionally encountered a few articles talking about guys' immaturity and not understanding that quoting things is not funny. It's not a joke.
Well, but it depends on the context.
Well, so like I have to like I agree, but at the same time, I mean, it comes back to sort of the same thing when just talking about language.
Yeah.
What I was realizing is that a lot of times we will quote things, and this has been true with friend groups that I've had, and it's been true. It was certainly true in high school that we would recite Newgrounds Flash cartoons. Would just get
Okay.
caught up like 55. Like would just recite the whole thing
Yep.
because that's just what you did with your friends. And thinking about it, what I think it is that same sort of inclusivity thing and exclusivity thing. That in addition to vocabulary being that sort of thing, it's saying this is so in fleek or whatever the words are, that by quoting things we're saying you are in the in group because you also are in on this material. That and there have been some suggestions that I've read on this that basically suggest that because guys are not particularly emotionally available with each other, that by quoting a Family Guy thing and seeing that other guy reply with the next line, you're like, oh, we are compadres. Like this is like clearly we have connection. That this is the way that bonding works in masculine society.
Is it really limited to masculine society?
Well, I don't know. I guess I've never been. I've not hung out with flocks of women, like in those types of situations where quoting would arise. I don't know.
I wouldn't. Yeah, no, I wouldn't. I think it's more common in males, but I wouldn't say it's exclusive.
Oh,
I've
no,
definitely known some,
certainly
yeah.
not. And it's just that I encountered some articles that were kind of complaining about this being largely a guy habit of quoting things and finding the mere quoting of things to be hilarious. I personally do find quoting certain things to be particularly hilarious, and even when the quote itself is not funny, because the juxtaposition of whatever is currently happening,
Yeah,
and that
yeah, it's
quote
all
applies,
about
because
context.
you're bringing in you're putting the context of what's currently going on with the context of that quote together,
Yeah.
and you're going, oh yeah, this is just like that one time where such and such happened. That's funny. But
Yeah.
and it is that sort of thing where if you haven't seen, and I think that if we think about what actually does make a good quote, it's never it's never a quote that on its own is funny. If it's a quote that you
Right.
can say and people who've never seen the source material laugh, it's not a good quote, right?
Yeah,
Like the good quotes are the ones where you say it and then someone else replies. You're like, this guy gets it,
I'm a fan of "He's Dead, Jim,"
right?
which is only like if you went up to someone on the street and said "It's dead, Jim" or "He's dead, Jim."
Oh my god!
You're
Do
like,
you need me to call
what?
someone? Like,
exactly. But to the right person in the right context,
right?
we can just die laughing,
Right.
And then you'd really be dead, Jim.
It's an interesting thing to me, and it's certainly something that I think happens in programmer culture.
Oh yeah,
There are certain certain bits of media that are just sort of expected. These are things that you will recognize quotes from and be able to quote from.
and then it finds its way into code. Variable names.
Oh yeah,
Variable names can be interesting.
random numbers like
Yeah,
0118.
the THX number, whatever that is.
Oh man,
Yes. I don't remember what it is either. I'd
no,
know
it's
it
not
if I saw it.
THX. That's why you threw me off. It's TK421. THX is a different thing.
The TK421 is definitely 1138.
Oh dang it! And
Attention block.
Yeah.
1138. Yep.
Oh, right. Dang it. Oh, man. And now I feel bad because I didn't know the reference. It's a social proof thing, right?
Yeah.
Like if I make a quote
Yeah.
and you know that you're supposed to know it, you are going to feel bad about not knowing it.
Yeah. 1138.
But you didn't pick up on the IT crowd joke. Or you just quickly slid past it because you didn't know the rest of the number. One of the two.
Oh, 011899988621. Yeah, I know. I went to London.
3. Right.
Yeah. 3. You have to pause for the 3.
Right. It did. It's yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, what are we talking about?
I don't know. I love how Wikipedia has entries for numbers. So, like, 1138 is the natural number following 1137 and preceding 1139. And, like, you can go on to the next integer. Like, it's like episodes of television.
I was looking to see if 0118 actually did have a Wikipedia page. It has an IT Crowd Wikia page. Okay,
Yeah,
881 yeah, 0118999 88199 9119725 3.
Yes.
There you go.
I see, that was something I quoted a lot between friends when I was living in London.
Oh, right.
Yeah, we were always spouting off that number.
Right.
Because how can you not?
It's brilliant.
So we haven't really looked at the show notes yet.
We haven't. This has all been not follow-up.
Not.
So you wanted to talk about SpaceX.
Well, I mean, I always like to talk about SpaceX.
Yeah.
I feel like we should follow up. The last podcast, we made a big deal about, what's going to happen? Here are all the possibilities.
Yep, we recorded all except the correct one. We got every
Well-
single potential possibility recorded except for the one that happened, which I think is pretty good.
We recorded one where it crashed and exploded,
Exactly.
which is what happened.
Well, yes, but after many delays.
Yeah, but that's what happened. We anticipated the fact that there wouldn't have been a podcast last time.
Oh man, and the funny part, yeah, and we tried to correct ourselves in the hidden podcast, which you will never hear, or the lost episode.
Maybe.
That is
For
now
another 20 years or something.
is now buried somewhere in the Hudson. We corrected ourselves, but nope, we're undoing that. That's why we canceled it, because no, in fact, it did indeed crash. So, Alex,
Yeah,
what
as
actually
expected.
happened? So, SpaceX, when they cancel stuff, they're not like cancel and check back in at such and such a time to see if we schedule stuff. It's more like, nope, we're canceling it. Keep an eye out. We're gonna try again eventually, and then Kevin looks at his Twitter feed and it's like, oh god, they launched, or they're in the middle of launching. Why didn't anybody tell me about this? Like, can I get push notifications or something?
I should make an app.
We should have a startup that's just science-y push notifications.
Actually. Well, I thought you hated push notifications
I do.
first.
This would be like the exception. Because this is like, you're launching something into space? Yes, I do want to drop everything.
Here's what I'm thinking. You can do, especially like on Mac OS X right now, and I think Windows maybe, you can do web notification hooks. So you visit a website and you allow to receive push notifications from that website, and then you get like a pop-up on your desktop
Yes.
from that website. I think it's definitely in Chrome on cross-platform.
Yes.
And Safari on Mac OS X definitely does it. So we should just build a website like that. It's like how many humans are in space, or how many people are in space right now.com.
Yeah.
Except it'll just be live updates. The only thing is we'll have to pay super close attention to it, so that way we don't miss updating someone.
Well, no, you could automate that too. You could just have something regularly look at Elon Musk's Twitter feed, do some very primitive, not even semantic analysis, just do some regex expression.
Yeah, okay.
Like,
Probably best to look at SpaceX's Twitter. SpaceX Twitter might be a little bit more
Not
reliable.
always. There were plenty of times where you'd be watching SpaceX like, no updates, no updates, no updates, and Elon's like, yeah, there was a bad lug nut. You look at SpaceX, no updates, no updates, no updates. And Elon's like, here's an Instagram. I guess like, all right, you should tell your PR people because they'd probably like to know too.
Well, I mean, they'll find out eventually.
Right.
Maybe they just look at his Twitter. All the PR team does is just retweet Elon Musk. It's just their job.
Well, so SpaceX did get their payload to space.
Yep, successful launch. Everything's great. But their first stage did not land successfully on the barge. I haven't actually seen video of this particular one. I'm not sure if it's been released.
I don't believe there was. What my understanding is that it came down and crashed on one of the sides of the boat, and perhaps the camera-y side.
So the camera may not have survived.
Right.
So we just look at the other videos of them exploding.
We'll be starting up a Kickstarter to help fund a new camera for Elon.
And a new barge.
Well, actually, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if the barge survived.
Well, it gets repaired. It gets repaired. It's designed to be modular and repairable because it's not very likely to succeed.
Oh man, how modular? Can we?
I don't know.
We need to create a company, Alex. You ready? I've got a product in mind. You know what it's
This
called?
is like the third company today, but okay,
Exactly.
what is it?
I'm a serial entrepreneur.
That doesn't launch anything.
Exactly, the best kind of serial entrepreneur. I'm gonna call it the Nano Barge.
Okay.
Right?
It'll just sink when a rocket tries to land on it.
No, because it's a whole bunch of nano barges that can come together to be a big barge, and they'll distribute the weight across all of the nano barges. And that way, if any of them do break, you can just send out like additional little. You can 3D print them because they're
They
nano.
have to be very thick, right?
No,
That's the
you stack
issue.
them on. They could stand on top of each other.
Okay, so
Right.
okay, so where are all the propellers and stuff gonna go?
Well, those could be you'd build. It's like Legos, Alex. I don't think you're getting the concept here.
Okay, so they'd all be different. You could have like inbuilt. Okay,
Right.
so they wouldn't all be identical.
Right, and some of them would actually form themselves into 3D printers so they could print additional nanobarges.
Okay, so it's like cells, basically. You just want to make robot cells.
No, they're nanobarges. Let me explain again. So, you know how there's the barge?
Yes.
Like that, but very, very, very small. That way, if any part of the barge breaks, you just send in additional nanobarges to take over that part of the barge.
Right, but you'd have to send in the right type of nanobarges.
No. So the nanobarges, they just shape into, because they're small.
Oh.
They're very, very small.
Right,
So
so
you
where
just
do they
stack-
fit all
you
the
put them in the
shape-shifting
right-
mechanic
You put
in?
them in the right shapes. It's like Legos. You don't go, oh
you're
no,
trying
I
to
need
build
a
Grey
Lego
goo.
in the shape of a castle. You build it out of smaller Legos, Alex. This is how nano
Yep.
works.
Yeah, but when
I don't
when
think
you
you're
wanna
understanding
put
the scale
point
that I'm
on the
talking about
castle.
here. We're not
You
talking
already
about
put,
like these huge nano barges. Talking about like small little. I'm gesturing. for
Why
the-
do
for
they
the
have to
listeners.
be? Why do they have to be barges at all? Then can't they just be nanites that come together to construct a barge?
Alex? We can expand, but we need to focus on our core business first.
Our core business has like one customer at most here.
They're gonna send the rocket multiple times. We're gonna recoup on the back end.
All right. Do you have a degree in tiny robot engineering?
I have a very tiny degree in robot engineering.
So, Kevin, you want to basically build like floating gray goo? That does not sound like a safe idea.
There was a Michael Crichton book based on this premise, I think, at some point. It was brilliant. Everything worked out for the best.
About building nano barges?
No, just like nanobots and them being really awesome. So, actually, a piece of follow-up from, I don't know, maybe 30 episodes ago.
We haven't done 30 episodes, Kevin.
Right. But you at some point were talking about gravitons, not gravitrons, gravitons.
Yep.
Gravitron being that circus thing that makes people spew their gravitons. But you were talking about gravitons and wondering if we would ever be able to detect them. And I read a book that sort of addresses this point. It's a very, very new, very contemporary book written by H.G. Wells
Yes.
called The First
The-
Men in the Moon.
In the moon.
Yes, I don't know why that there was a different.
Yes.
It's like,
I've yeah.
very
I don't know
weird.
why he said in the moon
It's like
either.
getting on the plane and in the plane, but in reverse.
Yes. We don't want to bring up tubes, by the way. It'd be a dangerous idea.
No, actually, I know why it's titled that, but I don't want to spoil it. The premise is that they figure out how to defeat gravity because this is back before science was really very science-y. But obviously, still, science fiction was actually pretty remarkable for the lack of Considering the amount of known science that there was about at the time floating around in the ether, as science does. But the premise is that they figure out they managed to create the substance that blocks gravity, because they think about it. They're like, well, there's a substance you can put down substances that will block light, but don't block heat. You can put down substances that block heat but don't block light. We should be able to do the same thing with gravity.
Okay.
This totally doesn't work scientifically.
Yeah.
But it got me thinking about this. So we've got some fundamental particles, right, Alex?
Yeah.
Like we got
I've
quarks
got a few.
and gluons and neutrinos and
Bosons.
bosons and all those ons. Some of them are strongly interacting.
Yep.
Some of them are weakly interacting, like neutrinos and
And WIMPs.
WIMPs. Yes, weakly interacting MIPS. So
Massive particles.
if there were a graviton,
Yeah.
would you agree that it would have to be a strongly interacting particle
No.
because it interacts with mass, hence the gravity? It interacts with other matter.
Yeah, but I would also think then if it was strongly interacting, we'd have detected it.
We have, Alex.
We've detected a graviton?
I've detected it.
Yeah, but you've detected gravity. You haven't detected the graviton.
But the point is that it doesn't just pass through matter like neutrinos.
Well, it might.
If we
But
assume that there's some gravity imparting particle, it imparts gravity with mass a lot.
But you can't stop gravity by if you're on the back side of the Earth from the sun, you don't
Alex,
stop feeling the pull of the sun.
This is my point.
Yes.
You stole my. Fine. All right.
I don't. I don't know what you're trying to get at.
I'm saying it interacts with stuff. It doesn't just pass through things because gravity works. If it just passed through stuff, then gravity wouldn't do anything. But
it only interacts some of the time.
Right. But then it should be the case that while we're on the far side of the moon, we're not experiencing Earth's gravity. If there was some sort of particle, and even if it's only a some of the time thing, if it interacts weakly, if it interacts like 5% of the time, it's like, hey, I'm gonna give you some gravity. Then you'd expect to have 5% less gravity while on the far side of the moon.
Yeah.
But that doesn't happen. We put things between stuff, and the gravity between things doesn't change.
If I put my radio in between you and your radio, we both can still get signal. And I'm willing to bet that putting my radio in between wouldn't degrade the amount of signal you get.
It's because it's bouncing off of stuff.
But can't gravity bounce off things?
No, and it would degrade.
Well, it probably would degrade.
It would. If I have a radio, if I'm transmitting and you're receiving, and we put a sheet of tissue paper between the two of us, you're gonna get less of a signal. It won't be noticeable, but if we put two giant slabs of concrete between us, and it's in some sealed room, you're gonna get less of a signal.
Well, especially if that concrete has rebar.
As what?
That acts as a rebar? So concrete is
barium.
No.
Right?
So rebar is a metal structure that they put inside of concrete to make sure it keeps its shape. So a concrete wall is often formed around a metal lattice, which acts as a big Faraday cage. That's why cell phone signals don't travel well through concrete. It's not because of the rock, it's because of the metal lattice inside it.
Okay. But I would imagine that even enough concrete, even without your Mr. Faraday doing all of his I'ma disrupt your signal stuff, enough concrete, you're gonna lose signal.
Yeah.
Not so with gravity. If we were to put a Jupiter between us and the sun, we'd experience the gravity from Jupiter, but we'd not experience less solar gravity. And it's not that the gravity is curving around. That doesn't work.
Yeah,
it should be the case. In fact, it should be the case that if gravitons were a thing, then we should all experience less gravity at night.
Okay.
Why
Why don't you? I want you to write this down in a paper, Kevin, and I want you to publish it, and then I want to read what everyone else says about it. Because I'm sure you must be wrong, but I have no idea why you're wrong.
No, I'm not wrong. Think about it. If
I am.
If that were the case,
Everything you're saying seems right.
we should weigh less at night
Everything you're saying seems right.
because the Earth is in the way of the sun.
I agree with what you're saying. You must be wrong.
It would also mean that we would weigh less when wearing shoes.
Well, we
Yeah.
actually might. I mean, if you put scales in your shoes and scales like as on the floor, weighing yourself with the scale. No, if the shoes were thicker than the scale on the floor, because if you're farther away, then your R squared decreases,
Yes.
or your radius increases, and so your R squared gets bigger, and so the amount of gravitational force you feel goes down.
Yes.
So if platform shoes, you'll actually weigh less.
No.
But yes,
At a certain altitude, yes.
if the
Not-
really tall platform shoes.
Yes, if they are really tall platform shoes, or if they don't even have to be tall platform shoes, if you are very close to the edge, to the edge of the sphere of influence of the Earth, then yes, they could be very short platform shoes. And because of how
there
squared
is no
numbers
limit.
work,
Kevin, in reality, there is no limit to the sphere of influence. Gravity travels indefinitely.
right? I'm just saying that there is a point at which, yes, being a centimeter away, even despite adding more mass, there will be less gravity acting on it. The gravitational force will be less.
Yeah.
Because of how square numbers work.
Yes. Square numbers are cool.
But yes, this is my point. There clearly can't be any graviton because it would be disrupted by things.
I think there are arguments for why there might not be a graviton, and maybe they're parallel to yours. But I can't imagine a simple argument like that not being brought up beforehand, and people still think it's a real thing. Maybe.
No, clearly I am the first one to come up with this, Alex. Well, I mean,
Which is why you should write a paper.
H.G. Wells helped.
I think you should write a paper. I really do. I want to see Kevin write a physics paper and publish it. See what peer reviewers say.
We had a time zone change. We will have had a time zone change several days ago, so if you have not changed your clocks...
Was that
Don't
Sunday?
forget to
Do we spring forward on Sunday?
It is last Sunday at the time that we released this.
Really?
Nope, I'm lying. Yes, really.
Ye-
If you were in the
Why
United
couldn't-
States, if you are in other countries, don't change your
Or-
clocks.
and you're not in that part of Arizona that doesn't do it.
Right. Or unless you're in the part of Arizona, that does do it.
Right, yeah, obviously.
Can we stop?
I would
What would
love
it take?
if we...
Like, what would it... There's some things
I will.
that are just so
I'll run for
enshrined.
president. I will run for president
It's not a
on that as
president
my
thing.
single.
It's not a presidential thing.
Executive order. Well, just executive order the time to be universal, and then I'll quit.
Oh, man.
That will be my campaign.
How brilliant would that be if we just got a series of people lined up such that it was just one person would run with the vice president, they'd do like one good thing, immediately quit. The vice president would nominate another vice president, do one good thing, immediately quit. That vice president would just get like all of those things
Kevin,
just knocked
we should
out.
do that. We should do that. Will
Except
you
we
be
could
my vice
nominate
president?
each other as vice president such that when we resign, we just become the vice president
Why?
to make it fair. So as one of us,
But-
just gets too power hungry, we get too used to being president.
You're only allowed to serve 2 terms. Is that term specified by years? Are you only allowed to serve 8 years or 2 terms?
I don't know.
Are you only allowed to become president twice, or are you allowed to only be president for 8 years worth of time?
I was pretty sure that it was that you were allowed to be elected twice, because I thought that we had a vice president who.
We've never had a vice president who was president prior. We've had presidents who were vice presidents prior.
No, but I thought that there was.
I'm not sure you're allowed to be vice president if you're president because you're not eligible to be. Like, if you've served 2. Like, Obama couldn't go and be vice president for whoever gets elected next because if the president dies, he's not allowed to become president.
No, I don't think that's the case. I had in my head at some point that like Ford or somebody became president, but then also was elected twice. But no, I was totally wrong about that because Ford could not get elected because he pardoned Nixon.
I don't know what the law... We should just look at the law. Law that says...
Amendment.
Police have to have bananas.
No person shall be elected more than twice. No person who has held the office of president or acted as president for more than 2 years of a term to which some other person was elected shall be elected more than once.
Okay.
So
if you served out... You could be president for 10 years.
You could be president indefinitely. No, well, I mean, for an unlimited, an unlimited amount of time, you could not serve as long as if you served for 2 years less a day every 4 years, provided that the elected president was not the same.
The two of us could stay in office indefinitely. Here's what you do: first, one of us serves for 1 day less than 2 years, and then resigns. But the other one goes and hides for 2 days. So 48 hours elapse, and then you get sworn in. And so then you serve out the rest of the term, which would be a day less than 2 years.
You're forgetting the restriction on being elected twice as well.
Oh.
So you could do that, but would eventually we could only do that for.
So we'd need to involve people. Occasionally, we'd have to involve people.
Exactly.
So then we'd have to get someone else to run for president.
Right. So basically,
and have one of us be.
We need a third person to serve for 2 days every 4 years.
Yeah. So and they get elected.
They get elected
twice.
But that has to be a different person every 2 terms. So we need a new person every 8 years to serve 4 days as president.
Yes.
If you'd be interested, please leave a note and give us an
iTunes review. Yep.
And you and I can both then serve for 2 years less a day, back to back, and then just continue to do that indefinitely. And then in theory, we could do that, and then at the end, we could both serve 2 full terms.
Why don't we do this, Kevin?
Hang on a second.
I'm waiting.
Wait. Nope. There's a better way to do this, actually.
Okay. All right. I'm getting
restriction.
I'm getting my super PAC together.
That 2-year restriction only means you can't be elected more than once. So we could just have someone get elected with us as vice and resign after day 1 indefinitely. We just can't rely on election to get ourselves in there.
Oh, okay.
So yeah.
So one of us, and you could be the same one on. So I'll just be vice president all the time, and then I'll always be on the vice presidential ticket, and then I'll just always elect you as my vice president when I go to the office. That way, you never have to campaign.
These restrictions mean that we cannot be the ones who run as president if we want to do this indefinitely.
Right. One of us could run as vice president for all these random people. We'll get to be our one-day presidents.
Oh, right. Right, okay.
So, one of us should get really good at running for vice president.
So we both watched House of Cards recently.
Yes. Yes, we did. Tell me things I should do for a month.
Leave a note in the iTunes review. Tell Alex what he should do for a month.
I was saying you should tell.
Oh, I should. Freelance work.
No.
Yes.
I'm going to be working for money in a month.
I don't know.
If you had a month free, what would you do?
If I had a month free?
Yeah.
I would be panicking and looking for a job.
What?
I don't know. That's always been something that's weird with me. I don't. When I switch jobs, my current boss is like, "You want to take like 2 weeks, right? Like, when do you want to start?" So I was like, "Well, I got I have to. I want to leave at such and such a date." It's like, "Okay, so you want to start like 2 weeks, 3 weeks after that?" I was like, "No, you mean like the day after that?" Like, all right. And I was really burnt out at the job I was at, but still, like, it makes me really panicky.
Yeah, I think a month is probably too much, but there were paperwork things that need to happen, and to get those to happen, give those enough time, a month was really a more comfortable margin. I mean, because otherwise it would have been 7 days.
It is to be able to take time is a good thing. Like, this is not like other people are weird and wrong.
Yeah.
This is I can't figure out how to not.
All I was saying is that I think a month is probably too long. I would have liked some time
because you're not European.
Yeah, true. I mean, I'm a quarter Swedish.
Those Europeans, man, how do they do it? I don't know if
They
you're
come
European,
from
let
Europe.
us know. How do you Europe? It sounds it is weird though because I think and actually this is sort of a show notesy thing. John Maynard Keynes, who's the founder of Keynesian economics,
Hmm.
founder's probably the wrong word, but talked about it had this whole prediction of the future that future would be so productive that it would only have to work like none of the time. And there's still a lot of this rhetoric that technology and the advancement of robotics and automation and stuff is going to put us out of jobs. We're not going to work. It's going to be either terrifying or amazing, depending on how the profits from automated technology ends up getting distributed. And
Yeah.
that's politics. We're avoiding that part of the discussion. But I wanted to make a point, and I actually have. There was this great book that I ended up I read a long time ago, and I emailed the author. Meant to have this up.
Did you email H.G. Wells about what he thought about
I did.
your interpretation?
It bounced back though. I don't know what was up with that.
H.G. Wells at hgwells.com.
No, it's just HG.
Oh, okay.
I was like, hey H. This was kind of the idea that technology was going to save us, and it's certainly not happened in the United States. The average person is working more than 40 hours.
Yeah.
It's not because there's so much more that we have to do now. I want to read this. So this is from David Marasek from a private correspondence. In my view, a highly technological society places the burden of action on machines in direct proportion to the burden of decisions it places on individuals. As an example, look at the field of graphic design, the field in which I've earned a living most of my adult life. When I started as a graphic artist for a daily newspaper, we laid out our display ads on pasteboard with tissue, overlays, pens, colored pencil, rulers, etc. We took the work of other professionals, illustrators, photographers, and incorporated it into our design. Our design went on to other professionals, typesetters, once a separate and skilled profession, stat camera operators, composers who assembled everything on the pasteboard, and strippers who made the printer plates. Each of these steps was performed by a skilled professional who often spent years acquiring and honing their craft. In the mid-'80s, almost overnight, most of these pre-press functions were incorporated into software apps like PageMaker. My job description as a graphic designer mushroomed as a consequence, burdening me with the need to learn everything from photography to typesetting to the dot gain of various grades of paper.
Huh.
He then goes on to kind of talk about how we've also kind of pushed the burden of decision making and work onto consumers in, for example, gas stations. Apparently, the gas station people pumped your gas in most places. It wasn't just a New Jersey thing. That used to be very common. And he also mentions the self-checkout stuff that is seen in grocery stores, which was relatively new at the time. This is back in 2008 when I sent this email. So this is a long.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this is a long time
You
ago.
keep a lot of emails.
It's in the archive, and it popped into my head when I was thinking about this particular topic. But it got me wondering because I was thinking about my job and I was thinking about the way that we identify with our jobs.
Mm-hmm.
There's sort of an expectation that I want to be better at my job. I want to work more. I want to get more skilled and more talented. And a little voice in the back of my head said, maybe I don't want to work. Like maybe it's the case that we really should only be working 10 hours a week now.
I think we could,
mm,
but society has decided no as a whole.
Well, but I think it seems very weird to me. Like, what is it that we're doing? What is it that's so important that we are doing? Like when we go to our place of business, what is the thing? So that because this whole robotics and artificial intelligence revolution,
Mm-hmm.
people are excited and terrified about what it is going to do for our ability to work. It seems like the attitudes are either, yay, we're going to have a lot of leisure time, or boo, everyone's going to be unemployable. Those seem to be the two attitudes. Both of those imply less human work available. Where they differ is in how that's distributed. But what I'm sort of noticing is kind of what was said in that email is that that's already happened. We've already the vast majority of what your job would have been as someone working in an office in the 70s is gone. You know, if you imagine like your job before Excel spreadsheets and word processors and stuff like that, you might have spent a whole day just adding some numbers in a column. I don't know what a spreadsheet was before they were spreadsheets.
Yeah.
And that work no longer has to exist, and yet we've somehow managed to fill it up. We've managed to fill that time, and in some cases fill it up with more than what we had before. There's been no loss to the amount of work that we have to do, and yet we're not gaining stuff for it.
Well, okay, so here's what I'm going to say. Mm-hmm. I think in those cases, where those people went, or where that labor force would have dissolved into over time, was the very industry that replaced them, the computing industry. So before 1980, and you didn't have the computer programs to do all those design and templating and all that stuff that was done, that got consolidated into a single job. Mm-hmm. But the number of people in that work went down, but at the same time the computer industry was exploding, and you had tons of people migrating into that field of work. So
I have a hard time believing, though, that we have as many programmers, to oversimplify the whole field, but that we have as many programmers as we used to have, as we have people who use the software. I mean, basically, I certainly would account for some of it. You know, if the job of doing print layout goes from being a department of illustrators and typesetters and everybody to being the one guy who knows InDesign really well, that's 7 people that are gone. I don't think that it takes permanently 7 people to manage InDesign for that one person.
No. But you also had the whole web thing that came about, and so you had all these. They became website designers, and hundreds of websites got made and designed and maintained, and hundreds of companies suddenly needed web designers to make their front page for their particular business. Every business has to have a website. So I think that may have been, not necessarily programmers, but still designers just doing a different type of design.
Right. I don't know that it necessarily replaces everything, though. And I think that if it doesn't, if computers are a net neutral, then why computers?
What do you mean?
It'd be very weird to me to discover that the amount of work is the same because everything that we're no longer doing because computers, we're now they've now all become computer people. Because that means that having computers is a net nothing. Like it did not add
It was a net nothing. It was a net nothing in the past. When the industry went from not existing to existing, it suddenly required a bunch of people to be in employment. But now the industry is at its, executing size and is doing some growth, but not nearly what it was when it went from non-existing to existing. And so as computers replace more and more jobs, I don't think you'll see the computing industry growing in accordance. It'll grow much slower than the jobs that are destroyed will in the future.
I would be, I mean, I don't have the numbers. I would be surprised, though, to see if, and part of the problem is it's hard to find data for that, right? Because it's not it's not that when PageMaker came out, they fired the department. Things transitioned and people did switch what their job was. People started doing different things. What would love to track is like, what are the hours of time that you spent doing this menial stuff? And then compare that to what are the additional hours that went into computer programming? Like, would it be like to compare that year by year? I would be surprised. I mean, you could be right. I would be surprised to see that those track.
And it may not even be that. It may be that this happened to a few enough number of industries over a long enough period of time that they could distribute themselves and perhaps boost other industries, or just and get lost in the random noise of where people get hired for why, right? Like that the growing computer industry was enough to suck enough of them away that the rest of them could just be in the random fluctuations of employment rates and
but
where
here's-
people go to work.
Here's, I think, the point that I want to make, and that is that if we assume that computers have done any good at all,
I would like to make that
right?
assumption.
I'd like to make that assumption too. So let's take that as an assumption. Let's say that computers have increased efficiency,
Yeah.
and we look at our work hours and see that they've remained pretty much constant. That has to mean that we're doing some that we have gotten way more inefficient in some other area. We must have gotten really, really terrible on the same order.
Or-
We've become as awful in some area as we've gotten better because of computers.
Or it means the benefits of that increased productivity have been distributed to other areas and not to the employment. So it's not our benefit, it's the company's benefit. They get more work out of us per hour, but we still work the same number of hours.
If that were the case, you wouldn't see startup culture working.
Why?
Well, no, I mean, my point is, if it's just a matter of distribution of those benefits, then then everyone would just start up a small business immediately, and you wouldn't have employees. That if the gains of automation that we already have are so beneficial and it's not being distributed, then there'd be absolutely nobody who would decide to be an employee, because you could either be an employee or you could just make your word processor do stuff for you and make a lot more money that way.
Well, so you could learn to program your word processor to what?
I'm just saying,
if
if you're saying that the tech benefits are not making their way to employees but are making their way to the company owners, then everyone would just own companies and reap the tech benefits that way.
Well, I'm almost inclined to say they would own companies, but the barrier to that is not the benefits, it's all of the legal issues with trying to own and run a company. That there's so much startup, like the transition cost, the amount of energy and work it requires to transition.
It can be a whole $100 in certain industries.
No.
In certain states. It's
awful. To register a company, sure. But to do all of the stupid legal things, and like take on the risk and to take on
to create an LLC, Alex, you're not accepting risk.
So I mean, I have a friend who's could right now be starting a company, but he's very leery about it because there's a lot of these challenges and energy and stuff that you have to put in to starting up this company. He's got a product he could potentially sell.
Right. I'm not arguing that starting a company is easy right now. I'm arguing that if it were the case that that owning a business, that all of the benefits of technology went to a business owner, then it would be
I wouldn't
ridiculously,
say all of them.
Right, but I'm just saying that I don't think it's the case now, and I certainly think it's hard to start a business. I'm just saying that if it were the case that the huge benefits that we've gotten from technology were going to the owners of businesses, then everyone would be yes, it may cost you $1,000 to start up a business, but you're going to make $1 billion after a year because technology. That if all of the benefits were going to company owners, then everyone would just become a company owner. Everyone would be an independent contractor. Everything would be working like that. It's so weird to me that at least in the United States, we went through this period where 90% of what everybody did, certainly in white collar work, to some extent in blue collar work as well, due to robotic automation and that sort of thing as well, doesn't have to happen anymore. Like 90% of our jobs are gone, and yet we still have more to do. Well, but okay, a sizable percent.
Yeah.
And yet we still have more to do than we started with. What? Why? And it could mean, it could be that it's just hedonic adaptation, which is it's usually describing an individual when you get a raise or you change jobs and all of a sudden your spending expands to meet that. And then all of a sudden you're like, hey, weird, I got a raise, but it doesn't feel like it. Well, it's because now you're going out to eat every night.
Certainly some of that.
Like that. And I wonder if, it could be that that's what society has, is that basically our now core of like entertainment budget has to be like, we all need to have a smartphone, we all need to have a this or that, the other thing, and the cost of that is what's actually driving the remaining lost hours. Like, what are we filling those lost hours with where is the demand that is causing that?
And here's the thing, right? Like you said, why doesn't everyone just work 10-hour weeks? Could I work a 10-hour week? If I cut my salary by a quarter, could I live on that? It would be difficult.
Well, we're weird cases. We're
Yeah, I
very
suppose
weird
that's true.
examples. Because
Yeah.
software is, as much as I hope no one ever figures this out, software is overpriced.
Yeah. I mean,
Don't tell
Yeah,
anyone, because it's
Yeah.
fun right now.
it's a good thing we don't have that many listeners.
Exactly.
But yeah, but I'm saying that the benefits of the computing industry haven't necessarily all gone to the owners either. Like I think you're absolutely right that it's just our self-worth, or what our sense of what life costs goes up
Well,
with
there
it.
are a couple things. There's the Protestant work ethic thing, which I think you're driving at.
Yeah.
Which I don't know. I know that I find myself reverting to that attitude sometimes, and I know that it's wrong. It's hard to
Yeah.
detach yourself from, though.
Yeah. When I talk to people like my parents or my grandparents, really, that they like everyone needs to be doing work, and everyone should be working because.
Well, there are moves like the people who live in tiny houses, and they're like, I'm just gonna retire. I saved for like 5 years.
I'd love to do that.
Well, yeah, but
That'd be
you're
great.
also going to experience a lot of judgment for having that attitude.
Yeah.
Because wait, you're 35 and you're not.
Working?
Why? What is wrong? Are you a drug addict? What's wrong with you? Like that's. I mean, it really is. It's the attitude that a lot of people have, and I do find myself having sort of a similar attitude some of the time. That I look at people, I'm like, you're not. You're just being lazy. Why are you being lazy? And then I think, why am I judging? I don't know.
If I ever thought that way, I certainly don't now. I'd love to retire at 35. That'd be great. I could, but like I wouldn't retire because to me, I wouldn't retire. I would never stop like doing things. I'd make more videos. I'd make more podcasts. I'd write more random junk that doesn't do anything useful.
But I think that's a thing, though, is that I feel the same way, but I also sort of rationalize it in that, yeah, I have so many things that I need to get done. Man, if I could just not have to work, I'd be able to get work on all of those things that I need to get done.
Right.
But at the same time, I would also feel I would have a different attitude. Someone who's like, man, I want to quit my job and then just sit around and play video games all day. Like,
So?
that's a different, and I know that that's the wrong attitude to have. I know that that's just like, it doesn't matter. It's like, it's your life. Do whatever you want. But somehow there is a distinction in my
The pursuit of happiness.
incorrect brain. Right. It's not, you're not pursuing happiness. You're you're laying around and enjoying happiness. That's not what America's about. You're supposed to be out
You can
pursuing.
pursue it, but you can never achieve it.
Exactly.
The American motto.